Alright here, so what's been going on with this once beautiful Triumph here? Well, the first thing that I had to do with this was clean out the gas tank. I think I showed you a picture of the inside on the last video. This is about half the stuff that I got out of that tank. And you can see there's stuff here that looks like chunks of rubber. That's actually dried up rotten gasoline, and it stinks. And it's nasty, and it's hard to get out. Anyway, that other powdery stuff, that's about half rust and half old gas in chunks. So anyway, I had to clean out the gas tank. I'll tell you what I had to do with that. First, let's have a little look inside at it now. I have old motor oil in the tank now because I don't want the metal to flash rust or anything. But you can see that it's got a kind of a brownish hue. Well, that's because of the old motor oil. Like I said, it's out of the wife's old car, and that's going to seep into the pores of the metal and keep it from rusting. Anyways, it's pretty darn clean now. So what did I do? Well, let me tell you. First, for a day or so, I had I'd say probably about a liter of lacquer thinner in there, and that took probably about 80% of the crap out of that gas tank. Then for another day after that, I had the old acetone rolling around in there. That's the jug that I took out, so that's full of old nasty brown stuff too. So that probably took her down to about 95%. Then I had to get the rust out of there. What I use to get rust out of there is muriatic acid. You can buy it at just about any hardware store. I put about a cup in, fill the rest of the tank up with hot water, and just let it sit. If you're not too rusty inside, it only takes a couple of hours, and that muriatic acid is pretty strong stuff, so you don't want to just leave it all night, because you might come back out and find a hole through the tank. Anyway, it would have to be really bad for you to need to leave it in. I think I left the water and acid in here for probably about 3 hours. And when I took it out, there was no rust left inside. It was just a matter of getting it out. Then you flush it out with baking soda and water to neutralize the acid. After that, I flushed it probably 5 times. Filled it up, dumped it out, filled it up, dumped it out, shook it around. Then I gave it one last jug full of the acetone in there, splashed that around to absorb whatever water might be left in it. Because anyway, I tried to get as much water out as I could, of course. Stuff a rag in there and tip the tank around, try to get as much as you can out. But you need to put something in there, because after being acid cleaned, that metal is so pure that it will flash rust on you. So you need to get some acetone in there, get the water out, and then get some oil in there so it doesn't rust up anymore. If I wanted to, I could have put a Castle kit in here. But knowing that this bike is probably not going to be driven anymore, or very little, I got a feeling that in another 10 years, it's going to be in the same state as it is right now. Kind of sad but true. Anyway, so the tank is ready to go now. Before I put it on the bike, of course, I'll give her a good flushing out with some fresh gasoline and dump that out. And that way, I'll know it's not going to rust this way anyway. So it's ready to go. Except for some new fuel cocks. I'll put new fuel cocks in there before I put it on. Anyway, next thing on the list, if there's that much crap in that gas tank, makes me ask the question, what's in those carburetors? And anyway, those carbs, he told me they were new, and by golly, I looked at them, and they are the new type amyl premiers. So anyway, he hasn't got the cap on that left one properly. Anyhow, what else is wrong with this thing? Well, upon investigation, he told me that the bike was kicking back really hard when he tried to start it, and it wouldn't start anyway. So anyway, I checked the ignition system. When you turn the key on and off, you should get a spark from the plugs. I wasn't getting anything. But then when I rolled the engine over with the key on, I was getting about 6 sparks, maybe 7 per revolution. So whatever's going on, the magnetic field or whatever is all crazy between that little ignition box and the pickups. There's something terribly wrong. So anyhow, I'll have to order a new ignition system for this thing. I really don't like electronic ignition. I cut my teeth on ignition points. They're not hard to set. They're not hard to clean. I don't understand why people think these electronic ignitions are an improvement. Because as far as I'm concerned, anything that you can't fix is not an improvement. Anyhow, getting away from that now, I have to replace that ignition system. But while I was playing with the engine, kicking it over, I noticed that one side had more compression than the other. The right hand, when I put the tester on it, it tested, I think, at about 110, which is not great, but it's enough for the bike to run. Now, the other side here only had about 80, so I had to investigate that a little bit. Anyway, it turned out that this intake valve here on the left-hand side had gone tight. So, anyways, I had to adjust that valve so that there was a few thou slack in it. Anyway, now I have about 125 psi on the left side. And I checked the right-hand side again, and it did come up a little bit. It's probably about 115 there now. So anyway, I think the bike ought to run all right. He did tell me that his son had changed the rings in the top end, so maybe it just needs to break in a little bit. Anyway, like I said, next thing on the agenda, while I'm waiting for that new ignition system to come in, get those carburetors off, find out what kind of horrors lie within.